The first requirement for the Citizenship in the Community Merit Badge is to discuss with your counselor what citizenship in the community means and what it takes to be a good citizen in your community. Discuss the rights, duties, and obligations of citizenship and explain how you can demonstrate good citizenship in your community, scouting unit, place of worship, or school. One of those rights and duties is participating in the electoral process by voting. And last Tuesday, November 7th, was Election Day here in the United States. And now, of course, this election wasn't as big as the 2024 presidential election will be, but it does allow us to look back at the history and importance of voting and elections in American history, as well as learn about the role the BSA has played in the election process, going back to the earliest days of the BSA, in this edition of Artifact of the Week. One of the most important and visible rights of American citizens is the right to vote. When the U.S. Constitution was ratified in 1788, only white male citizens over the age of 21 who owned land were eligible to vote. Over the next 200 years, voting rights were changed several times, including being extended to African American males during the Reconstruction period after the Civil War through the 14th and 15th Amendments to the Constitution. The 15th Amendment specifically protects the right of all citizens to vote regardless of race. Now, unfortunately, this did not end the disenfranchisement of African Americans, as widespread voter discrimination occurred in many states through the use of poll taxes, grandfather clauses, and literacy tests, as well as many other more violent means. For women, the right to vote was not possible throughout the United States until 1920, when the 19th Amendment was ratified. Until then, only certain states allowed women to vote, with Wyoming being the first state to grant women the right to vote. And although the 15th Amendment extended the right to vote to all citizens regardless of race, Native American people born in the United States were not recognized as full American citizens until the Snyder Act, and therefore did not have the right to vote until 1924. The 24th Amendment, ratified in 1964, prohibited Congress and the states from implementing a poll tax or other types of tax for federal elections, and the 26th Amendment, ratified in 1971, stated no citizen at least 18 years of age or older may be denied the right to vote on account of age. Many of the state and local restrictions and barriers to voting remained a part of the landscape until Congress passed the Voting Rights Act of 1965. The act was designed to make sure that state and local governments could no longer pass laws or policies that denied citizens the right to vote based on immutable characteristics such as race. The Voter Rights Act was expanded several times, such as in 1975 to protect language minorities, in 1982 to require accommodations and protections for voters with disabilities, and in 1993 to permit voter registration at motor vehicle departments. While the history of our voting rights in our country has changed over time, and in the 2020 presidential election, more than 150 million voters cast their ballots, there are still many challenges to ensuring that voters are allowed to vote and they are properly represented by those candidates on the ballot. For the BSA, our involvement in elections dates back to early March of 1913, when 1,500 Boy Scouts from Washington, D.C., Maryland, Georgia, New Jersey, Kentucky, Pennsylvania, and Virginia traveled to the nation's capital to help the inaugural committee handle crowds during the March 4th inauguration of President-elect Woodrow Wilson. However, on March 3, 1913, the Scouts were called upon to help with crowd control and rendering aid during the women's suffrage procession put on by the National American Women's Suffrage Association. The procession, comprised of more than 5,000 marchers from across the country, was held to pressure President-elect Wilson to guarantee women's access to the vote. Suffragists were heckled, blocked from marching, and subject to violence. Unable to escape the massive crowds, people were also fainting in the streets, and the Boy Scouts were called in to assist, and they delivered. In 1928, the cover of the November issue of Boy's Life featured a Get Out the Vote campaign. On page 30 of the magazine, there's an article encouraging the important civic engagement. It reads, "Your government will be sound and wise as you and other Americans make it. You have great responsibility and great power, and the way to exercise it is through your vote. Do not neglect it by failing to vote. You offer encouragement to the political plunderer and other unscrupulous persons who are eager to profit by the opportunity you give them. Only by voting can the majority of Americans holding like opinion dictate their wishes and save themselves from the danger of being governed by a minority holding opposite opinions." From the 1940s to the early 1970s, Scouts were involved in several Get Out the Vote campaigns, which are depicted in these art cards for posters and advertisements produced by the BSA. So what was the most successful BSA Get Out the Vote campaign? Well, it was the 1952 campaign when the BSA partnered with the Freedoms Foundation to not only mobilize Scouts but also mobilize the electorate. In the fall of 1952, an army of Scouts, all too young to vote themselves, launched an unprecedented campaign to get out the vote. In addition to the official door hangers the BSA distributed, Scouts would add streamers and homemade vote signs to their bicycles. They canvassed their local neighborhoods and distributed 30 million Liberty-shaped bell doorknob hangers that read, "Today's youth counts on you. Use your freedom to vote." Scouts called on their parents and family members to vote. They babysat children so that parents could get to the polls. The 1952 slogan, "Vote as you think when you vote, but vote," is as valid today as it was in 1952 and points to the fact that the BSA has no political affiliation, no preference for one candidate or party over another, but we do want to prepare young people to be good citizens in their communities, including empowering young men and women to participate in their democracy. So how effective was the 1952 effort? According to the American Presidency Project, that election saw a 61.6% turnout of people of voting age. The only two higher turnout rates were 62.8% in 1960 and 62% in the 2020 presidential election. So what does this mean for Scouts and Scouters today? It means each of us is in a position and empowered to help encourage people to get out and vote in the 2024 presidential election. PACs, troops, and crews looking for service projects can partner with local nonpartisan community groups to help spread the word on the importance of voting. Life Scouts looking for a leadership service project for Eagle can pull from the past and coordinate Get Out the Vote activities in their community and maybe even include voter registration efforts as part of their project. Social media platforms give Scouts nearly unlimited opportunities to help reach their community, not with a partisan message, but to encourage civic engagement and involvement in one of the most important rights that we have as American citizens. The bottom line is to get not only Scouts but our entire community involved. Going back to the Scouting magazine from 1952, we need to make it so it will not be easy for these young people when they come of age to ignore the most precious right, the right to vote. Well, that's all the time we have for this week. Join us next time as we continue to learn more about the history of the BSA through the collection of the National Scouting Museum and Artifact of the Week.